If I asked you for the two most pressing issues in BC right now, what would you say? Likely the fentanyl crisis and real estate prices. Well, we've investigated how one is influencing the other. Let's start with what we know for sure. BC's Attorney General says as much as $2 billion of dirty money is laundered through the province every year, and much of it comes from drugs like fentanyl. $1 billion is washed through casinos. The other billion, he says, flows through the real estate market. The concern about dirty money in BC dates back almost a decade as housing prices soared and Vancouver became one of the most unaffordable markets in the world.
I've lived here for 10 years and I'm nowhere closer to owning a home.
I never thought at my stage in life that I'd be living in less than 500 square feet.
It's unlivable for a lot of people. Like a lot of people, they have to work 2 jobs, right?
We're tired. I've been here over a year, sleeping in beds next to people side by side, people I don't know.
So to what extent is drug money inflating prices, driving up rents, leaving regular people out in the cold? Well, this past week, some of BC's biggest cities began calling for a public inquiry. The mayor of Port Coquitlam wants a full-scale Charbonneau-style commission. So like that Quebec corruption inquiry, only about drug money and Chinese organized crime.
Fentanyl is pouring into our province. Government seems incapable of stopping that from happening. And you have organized crime, largely based out of China, bringing that fentanyl in, making billions of dollars off of it, killing thousands of our people, including people in Port Coquitlam who've died from fentanyl overdoses. And then they're washing that dirty money that they've made and washing it clean in our real estate and in our casinos. We need people to go to jail. We need people to lose assets. That's the only thing these people will understand. That's the only way you're going to be able to send a message that British Columbia is not going to be a dumping ground for the world's dirty money.
All of this actually started with an investigation into money laundering through casinos. A former RCMP commissioner found drug traffickers connected to Chinese gangs were washing millions of dollars through gambling operations. He suspects much of that money was then used to buy luxury real estate. These are the kinds of buyers who will overbid as much as they need to, inflating prices for everybody else. Peter German wrote that original report and joins me from Vancouver. So, Peter, what was it that you saw while you were researching casinos that made you suspicious about dirty drug money being laundered through real estate?
So it was pretty obvious that a couple of things were happening in real estate. One, there were illegal gaming houses in the Richmond area. Large houses that had been turned into gaming establishments. We also knew that there were individuals involved in the money laundering that was taking place who also had properties. So there was a connection there. And keep in mind also that at this time, certainly 2014 to 2016, the real estate market in British Columbia was extremely busy, and a lot of money was coming over from Asia, which also played into the casino story. The real estate industry is different in that most of the money that goes into the real estate industry does not come in the form of cash. So we're talking about different dynamics at work, and that's all part of what we're looking at in the current review.
Are there specific groups with ties to China and ties to the fentanyl business that you're looking at?
What we find these days, and particularly when you're talking about Asian-based organized crime, and that includes organized crime that is in British Columbia and works with networks abroad, it is that collegial, the nature of organized crime. It will form alliances, and sometimes very unusual alliances where you'll have biker gangs working with, for example, a traditional Asian crime organization in order to make a particular deal work or to move drugs. And then they'll go off and do their own thing or form other alliances. So this is a very fluid area.
I know that you can't report on what you're finding as you're making this report for the Attorney General in Vancouver, but it's so horrible what's happening with people dying, but it's also now appearing that it could have an impact on real estate prices in this country. Is that something that people should be paying more attention to?
Well, I think the important thing here is that the Attorney General and hopefully the reviews that we are doing are really shining a light on this issue. And that's number one. Much like what you do, shining a light on issues. And the one thing you find about organized crime and criminals generally, they're not going to stick around to have the light shone on them. So for example, in the casinos, I'm pretty comfortable that right now we're not seeing what we did a couple of years ago in our casinos. The whole idea of making recommendations is that the criminals don't come back. So it's the same in this area of real estate, auto sector, and so forth. Shine a light on what is taking place, and I think you'll find that one, the criminals will probably avoid that sector. They may well move somewhere else, and also you can put, hopefully some checks in place to prevent this sort of thing happening in the future.
Peter German, thank you so much for talking to me.
You're most welcome, Wendy. Thank you.
Former Deputy RCMP Commissioner Peter German. His new report is expected by the end of March. So exactly how are drug dealers laundering money through real estate? Let's take a look at two beautiful BC homes worth millions of dollars each. Court documents allege these homes were bought with the proceeds of crime, Chinese organized crime, so drug money, to be clear. So if I were a drug dealer, how could I wash my money through a house? Three former RCMP investigators described it to us as an underground loan and mortgage scheme hatched by Chinese gangs. The first step, visit a loan shark, usually involving an underground banking network connected to China. They've got storefronts all over BC. Our sources say they've seen drug dealers walk in with hockey bags full of $20 bills. Step two, get the loan. This also often involves bank transfers between those underground banks in China and their associates here. Some allegedly launder hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Then step three, cover their tracks. The drug dealer then finds a way to explain how they got that loan, all that money, to Canadian authorities. We're told a common story is something like, well, my dad owns a coal mine in China. Step four, get a mortgage from a Canadian bank. Often, trusts are set up through a real estate lawyer who doesn't have to report anything suspicious because of that solicitor-client privilege. And then step five, buy a house, sell a house. And from there on, it's easy. When the dealer uses the money they got from the loan shark to make their mortgage payments, it's magic. The money now lands safe in a Canadian bank. And then, as house prices rise, the dealer sells the house, sometimes for millions more than they paid. It's all clean money, and Vancouver's crazy real estate market keeps exploding.